Did you know that support for the LGBTQ2SL+ has fallen in recent years in North America? Fallen. Here's a story about it in the left-wing Guardian newspaper. Here's a story about it in the left-wing PBS publication. It's actually the website and the broadcaster. There's various explanations for it, but I think the most compelling is when you think of what has changed in the past 10 years. What's been the gay rights issue in the past 10 years that's defined it? Not gay marriage. That's been the law in Canada for 20 years now and more than a decade in the US and the UK. I think the problem, if I may, is that instead of declaring victory 20 years ago, the gay rights movement, sometimes called the gay pride movement, well, they kept going. They won everything they could possibly win. Changes in the law, parades, even affirmative action. If you can believe it, Hollywood is disproportionately gay. All the institutions, especially academia, Pride Month at every bank in North America feels like a full-tilt political campaign. But instead of declaring victory, the LGB movement added a T, transgenderism. And that fundamentally changed the movement from being about equality, about leaving people alone, letting them be themselves, about letting people be, about privacy. It quickly became the opposite. Transgenderism, at least as it's expressed in politics and the law these days, has become not about equality or privacy or letting people be who they are, or as we used to say, consenting adults, or in the privacy of your own home. Those are all things that we said back then. But today, the LGBTQ+SL is about foisting extreme sexuality on other people. It's about violating other people's privacy. The most insane example of this is the teacher nicknamed Busty Lemieux, who wears enormous prosthetic breasts to school to teach children, turning girls and boys in his class into a captive audience, actually, in a way, participants in his bizarre fetish. That's not gay pride. That's not being private. That's turning other people against their will into part of your sexual fantasy. That's the most shocking example, but it's only slightly less shocking, the transgenderism that has affected millions of people, especially in sports. Failed male athletes suddenly declare that they're women and then compete against women, which is cheating, and they beat women. And in the worst cases, they go into changing rooms with women. It's actually worse in our prisons, where men who claim to be women have the right to be transferred into women's prisons, where they now have access to women who are ordered not to misgender their new fellow prisoners on pain of various punishments. So suddenly, gay rights isn't about letting people choose who they love, people living their own life, their own way in privacy. It's now about forcing other people against their will to accept intrusions into their own privacy, forcing themselves into your bathroom, into your changing room, even into women's shelters. So yeah, LGB was hijacked by the T. They overplayed their hands. That's why they're falling in popularity. Well, I'm here to say that Canada's Indian bands are doing the same. For a generation, there's been a near unanimous political status quo in Canada that we can go above and beyond for Indigenous people, spending, favored status, respect. And it all felt good for Canadians to do so. Even Stephen Harper, the great conservative, increased the budget for Indian affairs. And then I think things started to change. I don't blame Indigenous people for this one. I think it's more white liberals and lawyers and bureaucrats and opportunists. But soon, instead of focusing on building and being positive and creating jobs and things we can all get behind, the leading edge of Indian affairs became about race hatred, sort of imposing a U.S. Black Lives Matter narrative onto our country, but with Indigenous people instead of Black people. So Justin Trudeau called it a genocide. He called Canadians genociders. He said it's still going on. He actually said that. He took our first Prime Minister, Johnny MacDonald, off the $10 bill because of that reason. Statues started coming down across Canada. Incredibly, the head of our own Supreme Court said the same thing, genocide. People started noticing when judges sent back violent offenders right back into their own communities without jail time or without significant jail time, because they're Indigenous, which obviously forgets about the rights of the Indigenous community into which these violent men were being placed. My point is, things started to move away from solidarity and equality and respect and friendship into rivalry and accusations and sourness. I really think it's been politicized in a new way in the last decade. How many events do you go to in your community where before things begin at a town hall meeting or a sports event even, you're told you're on stolen Indian land? Remembrance Day in Toronto, they started their Remembrance Day ceremony by talking about land back and then talking about Canada's slavery history. It's absurd, especially where treaties have clearly extinguished any existing rights to the land. Most of Canada is covered by such treaties. But it's a new religion, this land back acknowledgement, just like LGBTQism. And let me show you what I mean. And here's why I'm talking to you about this. My friends who care about Indigenous people and goodwill, this is the time to stop. This is the time to declare victory, because you're now entering the overreach moment. This is the jumping of the shark. This is where you go too far. This is your man in the girls' swimming change room moment. Stop. Declare victory. Do not press on further. You know about that bizarre court case in BC a few weeks ago where a judge just said out of the blue that Indians may still have a right to land title underneath hundreds of BC homes. Surprise! Did you think all those land acknowledgements were meaningless? A judge thinks they're meaningful. Otherwise, why would you be saying it? So people, especially in BC, are on edge already because of this. But look at this now. Pure joy in sticking it to the man. There was an important bridge in Greater Vancouver, almost a century old, named the Pattullo Bridge, named after the former BC Premier, Duff Pattullo. I didn't really know about him, I should tell you. That bridge was replaced with the new bridge, and they've decided not to keep the old name. The new bridge gets a new name. And here's how to pronounce it.
All right, so this was a name that was selected by Musqueam and Kwantlen. Stalo Awesome translates to English roughly as place to view the river or river view. And the name can be broken down into 4 syllables. The first is stall. Stall, as in that's a beautiful bridge. I hope my car doesn't stall. Second syllable is O. O, as in, oh, that's not too hard to pronounce. Third syllable is ah. Ah. In Hunt Kabina, we would say ah, si, yeah. And the last one is sum, as in sum, like the sum total.
Did you get that? Now, if you say Riverview Bridge, well, people know how to say that, how to spell that, what it means. But look at that other word. Look at how it's spelled. Do you see how it's spelled there? What? That's not English, sort of English, but it's not. What's with the upside down E's? What are those apostrophes? Now, the government put out a video on how to pronounce that word. Here's how you pronounce that E and that W.
The next 2 letters together are schwa and a glottalized W, which make an O sound.
You know, I think I could remember how to say Stalo Awesome. I think Stall O Awesome. There's some unusual names like that across Canada. You might be wondering why it's written in a version of our own alphabet, though. There was no Indigenous alphabet. There was no custom of writing things down. They call it an oral tradition. So that is a borrowed written language. It's a kind of English made up by white linguists. I have no beef with that, really. But why are you imposing that weird alphabet and spelling on a bridge that not 1 in 1,000 Vancouverites could read or pronounce or write? How do you even do a backwards E? Why aren't you even just using regular Canadian letters in English to write the sound of the word? I'll tell you why. Because it's about pushing you around. That's the whole point here. This is not about reconciliation anymore. It's not about equality. This is designed to push you back, to push you around. There's no chance this would ever be named Pattullo. Of course not. We're long past that. But even naming it Stalo Awesome isn't enough. It has to be written in a made-up scientific language that actually not a single Indigenous person learned in school because it was made up by white linguists. But that's all the better. You can't pronounce it because it's not yours. Your own language isn't yours, let alone the land. Oh, by the way, the bridge was made with Chinese steel. Of course it was, which caused a lot of construction problems. Here's a story in the Vancouver Sun. Chinese steel contributed to delays in construction of Patula Bridge replacement, says advocate. Welding problems and steel from overseas can create headaches for local workers and increase expenses, says Canadian Institute of Steel Construction CEO. But when someone tried to ask about boring things like, is the bridge built okay with foreign steel, they were told to shut up. You see, you can't ask any questions. That's some white man's tradition. Just shut up and get with the program. Here's a video clip of that.
My question is about the materials that went into making the bridge. There has been some controversy about the steel in particular that went into making the bridge. Some people have alleged that it caused delays or more added costs, took away jobs from British Columbia workers. Can you please just weigh in on that?
Sorry, again, Chief Marilyn Gabriel, Common First Nation. I thank you all for coming out, celebrating with our nations, the Musqueam and the Common people. We're here to celebrate for our people. This is the first bridge named from our beautiful dear elder, Larry Grant. Common has the utmost respect for you and the Common people. It hurts me. I have to tell you, it hurts me. You have them all day. Please keep those questions for a side press conference. We're here to celebrate. Please don't take that beautiful day away from us.
So yeah, don't ask any questions, certainly not about the steel. Don't ask why it's written in a weird made-up English language that no one knows how to spell or type or read. No typewriter or computer can type that. Don't ask why Duff Patullo is thrown into history's garbage can. Don't ask. Don't ask why the government bought steel from China instead of from Canada. And don't you know that your role is simply to pay for all of this and to nod along and to call yourself a settler and a colonizer and a racist and a genocider? You know, it's almost but not quite as stupid as Toronto renaming their version of Times Square. It used to be called Young Dundas Square. Now the government calls it Sankofa Square. After the allegation that Mr. Dundas was somehow pro-slavery, which he wasn't. And the laugh is that Sankofa, which has no connection to Canada or Toronto, is the place of African tribes who actually practiced slavery. But at least they'll spell Sankofa in English letters for you to abase yourself when you say it. I say again, there's a lot of goodwill in Canada towards Indigenous people. And I'm not against renaming certain things after Indigenous things. I come from Calgary, where the famous streets have names like Crowchild Trail and Deerfoot Trail and Crowfoot and all these beautiful names. Think of the city Medicine Hat. That's an English translation of an Aboriginal word. I'm not even against renaming certain things using traditional languages, although I'll never stop calling it Deerfoot Trail. I'm not 100% opposed to renaming things, but the deliberate choice to make it absolutely inscrutable or impenetrable to anyone other than some government-paid activists, and to do so with a hubris. My friends, I tell you, we are well past reconciliation now. We're in the danger zone now because the activists have flipped the script. They're becoming the supremacists now in their own way. Don't do it. Don't rub it in. Don't go on the offensive. That's not reconciliation. Like the gay pride movement, declare victory. Don't spike the football in the face of the people who pay your bills. Just don't.